And it's certainly not a perfect forecast weather-wise for the weekend. It's a perfect forecast in terms of the chances of being right, but not in terms of the weather. We're going to be talking about some scattered showers every once in a while, but really a lot depends on the track of the tropical storm to our south. So we're going to get to that, and that's even really mainly for Monday. So let me give you what we know. Right now, we know we have no rain around. We're not going to have any rain overnight or tomorrow for most of the day. Absolutely no chance for much of the day, but as the humidity comes up, because we're starting to see the dew point climb, it was in the 60s or near 60 earlier. Now it's 70, so a lot more humidity out there. Temperatures will be rising. Right now they're comfortable. They're going down to 70 tonight, and it's going to be comfortably warm. But as they get into the upper 80s tomorrow and the humidity increases, we're going to have a chance of a few showers breaking out. We've been talking about that. Best chance, I think, is still going to tend to be a little bit more in the northern or western parts of Hampton Roads. I'd say 20% chance, I would estimate at most, in terms of seeing a storm tomorrow. Tomorrow evening, we had said a chance of a shower storm, especially to the north. I still think that's likely, but maybe even a little farther north than we had thought. Then as we get into Sunday, the rain odds go up a little bit more, but they're still not high. We're going to say around 25% chance, with the best chance still being areas a little bit more to the north and or west. Monday's where things really get interesting. This is some of the moisture out ahead of the system that's developing down there. A named system, tropical or subtropical storm, actually. Alberto, we're going to talk more about what that means, that kind of a designation, in a minute. But you can see all this moisture gathering here across the Carolinas. That's the first batch. Then we have the stuff down here over the Yucatan Peninsula, stretching over into the western Caribbean. That is subtropical storm Alberto, top wind still at 40 miles per hour, drifting to the east. It's eventually going to turn back to the north very shortly. Strengthen some, we think, but still maintain itself as a tropical system or some sort of a subtropical storm. That's why the designation has changed here from that symbol into that L. So sort of a hybrid or subtropical storm. But doesn't matter what kind the innards look like. The bottom line is it'll still have some winds potentially that are up near 60 some miles per hour. So what is the difference? Tropical or subtropical? Well, it's literally sort of half of each. And that's a couple of ways that it's different. The strongest winds are farther from the center versus right in the eye, like a typical tropical storm would be. The heaviest rain tends to be north and east of the center instead of right around the center as well. So that's some of the difference. Tonight, 70 then, mainly clear, comfortably warm, a little muggy. Tomorrow, 88. Isolated storms are possible, especially north and or west, but really for most of us, just partly sunny and hotter. Tomorrow night, 72. An evening thunderstorm possible. I think most of those are going to stay to the north. And then 88 on Sunday. Still 20 to 25% chance of some isolated storms, meaning most of us aren't expected to get wet on Sunday. So go ahead and have those grilling plans ready. And then as we get into Monday, about a 50-50 shot.
Not bad.
Thanks, Joe.